She was standing at the altar in a gown I paid for. Smiling with perfect teeth, I worked double shifts to keep straight. And when the pastor asked her who the quiet older woman sitting in the front row was, she turned her head, flicked her veil, and said with a sweet little laugh, "Oh, that's just the maid. The maid." That was the first time I'd heard my daughter say those words. But it wasn't the first time she made me feel invisible. There I was, sitting among strangers dressed in pearls and champagne, clutching my purse like it was the only thing holding me together. All eyes turned toward me, like I didn't belong. Because, suddenly, I didn't. Her new husband's mother, who'd only known her for a year, was given the title of Mother of the Bride. She stood beside her during photos. She gave a speech. She cried like she'd earned something. But me, the one who stayed up all night sewing prom dresses, who cut meatloaf into stars when she was too sick to eat, who held her hand through every fever, every heartbreak, and every damn nightmare. I was the maid. I should have stood up. I should have walked out of that wedding and never looked back. But I didn't. I stayed. I stayed long enough to hear the laughter. To hear my daughter say to one of the bridesmaids, "I just couldn't have some old lady ruining my aesthetic, you know?" That old lady was me. I smiled through it. Like I always had. Like mothers do. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, she was nervous. Maybe she didn't mean it. Maybe tomorrow she'd come to her senses and apologize. But tomorrow never came. Not that kind of tomorrow. The next morning, she and her new husband left for their honeymoon in Mexico. They posted selfies with captions like, "Finally free," and "Starting our forever." And I was left alone in a cheap hotel room with a torn corsage and a silence that buzzed like static. But I wasn't always invisible. There was a time she clung to me like her little life depended on it. And the story of how we got here. It didn't start at a wedding. It started in a trailer in Texas. With a baby girl, a thunderstorm, and a promise I made to never let her feel abandoned. A promise I kept. Until she broke it. So what happened? What turned my baby girl into someone who could look me in the eye and call me her maid? You need to hear this story. Not because it's rare, but because it's far too common. And because no one talks about what it feels like when your child grows up and forgets you ever existed. But here's the thing. She thought she could erase me from her story. But I was just getting started. She thought she could erase me from her story. But I was just getting started. If you're feeling this already, take a moment to like this video. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I read every one. And if stories like this speak to your soul, make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. My name is Loretta Mae Callahan. I'm 76 years old. And once upon a time, I believed love was enough. I was 21 when I brought her home from the hospital. Just me and her. No man standing by my side. No hand to hold but her tiny one. I named her Delilah Rose because it sounded like something soft and strong all at once. We lived in a rust-colored trailer just outside of Nacogdoches, Texas. 1 bedroom. Leaky roof. Mismatched furniture I'd either found on the side of the road or been gifted by women at the church who pitted a girl with a baby and no ring. But I didn't want pity. I wanted Delilah to grow up believing that love could build a home, even when the walls were thin and the nights were long. By the time she turned 5, she already knew how to stretch out green beans with potatoes, how to press her school shirts under a dish towel with a kettle of hot water, and how to sit quietly when Mama's legs ached from the factory line. We had a rhythm. Every Friday night, I'd pull 2 chairs to the window and we'd eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches while pretending we were dining on steak and wine. We made each other laugh. We braided each other's hair. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I worked night shifts cleaning offices, then clocked in at the meatpacking plant before sunrise. Delilah would sleep in a playpen behind the lockers, wrapped in blankets while I worked. The women there would sneak her juice boxes and little dolls from Dollar Tree. We became a family, of sorts. I'll never forget her kindergarten teacher telling me, "Your daughter's got the kind of smile that makes people believe in magic." I believed in it too. Every cent I made went to her. I skipped my own meals some weeks so she could go on field trips. Took on sewing jobs at night just to buy her decent shoes. When her birthday came, I'd wrap old toys in fresh paper and pretend they were new. She never questioned it. She thought I was magic. And that was enough for me. When she was 10, she told me, "Mama, one day I'm gonna buy you a big white house with a porch and a rocking chair. You won't have to clean nothing ever again." I smiled. Told her I didn't need a house. I just needed her to remember me when she got there. Funny how children promise you forever when they still believe in fairy tales. Things changed when she turned 12. Her friends started inviting her to their homes. Big homes with staircases and granite countertops. She came back quieter each time. She started straightening her hair. She started asking why we couldn't afford things. I remember the first time she said, "Why do we live like this?" That "we" didn't feel like a "we." It felt like blame. I laughed it off. I told her, "Baby, we may not have much, but we've got pride." She didn't answer. That summer, she stopped wanting to eat our made-up meals by the window. She started locking her door. Started calling me Loretta instead of Mama when she was angry. And then came high school. She joined cheer. Fell in with girls who wore glitter on their eyelids and had fathers who bought them cars. She started staying out late. Started coming home smelling like perfume that didn't belong to her. She said I didn't understand her, didn't know what it was like to be embarrassed every time someone asked where she lived. And when I told her I was doing the best I could, she said, "Maybe your best just isn't good enough." Those words. They landed like punches. Still, I kept going. I kept loving. I took on a second cleaning job at a golf club just to save for her senior pictures. I sold my engagement ring from a man who left me before she was born, just to pay for her cap and gown. And when she graduated, I stood in the front row with tears in my eyes, clapping like my heart might burst. She didn't even wave back. But I thought, maybe this is just a phase. Maybe when she gets older, she'll understand. Maybe one day, she'll look back and see me. But instead, she moved out without saying goodbye. I came home from work one evening and her room was empty. No note. No call. Just a bare mattress and dust where her trophies used to sit. She was gone. And for 6 months, I didn't hear from her. Until one afternoon, I got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was an invitation. She was getting married. And I was invited to attend. Not as mother of the bride. Just a guest. No mention of walking her down the aisle. No special seating. Just a name typed in black ink at the bottom. Loretta M. Callahan. That's when I knew something had broken in her. Or maybe in me. But still, I went. Because hope has a cruel way of surviving even when your heart has been shattered. What I didn't know then was that the heartbreak of her invitation was only the beginning. Because standing there in that pew, hearing her call me the maid, that wasn't just the final blow. It was the burial. But even things buried have a way of growing roots. And mine were about to rise. I met the boy she would marry when she was just 15. His name was Weston Grady. He came from money, real money. His daddy owned several hardware stores across East Texas, and his mama wore lipstick even when she was picking up dry cleaning. The first time he came over, he looked around our little trailer like he was afraid to touch anything. He had one of those gold watches that shines too bright under the kitchen light. Delilah had cleaned the whole place before he arrived. Lit candles. Hid the laundry. Even told me not to talk too much. I made them grilled cheese. Weston didn't eat. Said he was cutting carbs. I remember watching them laugh, whisper, brush shoulders. The way she looked at him, like he was the whole sky, and the way she stopped looking at me. Weston was polite, but distant. He'd say, "Ma'am," but never once asked how I was. He never offered to help carry groceries or thank me for having him. He saw me like the wallpaper, just something to exist around. Still, I tried. I smiled. I asked questions. I offered rides. Because that's what mothers do, right? They make room. But as the months passed, it felt like I was being squeezed out of my own daughter's world. She stopped coming home for dinner, started staying the night at a friend's. When I asked who, she'd shrug. She was slipping. One night, I waited up for her. The clock read 2:13 a.m. when she stumbled in, smelling like perfume and alcohol. I asked her where she'd been. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm not your little girl anymore." And just like that, the door to her heart slammed shut. She was 17 when she moved in with the Gradis. Said their guest house was closer to school. Said Mrs. Grady could help her with college applications. But I knew what it really was. They had pulled her in with shiny things and soft words, promised her a life without sacrifice. And she'd chosen it. Chosen them. The Gradis didn't invite me over. Not once. When I dropped off her things, I wasn't even allowed past the gate. Mrs. Grady came out in heels, holding a clipboard, waving like I was some delivery driver. She called me Miss Callahan, like she didn't know I was the reason Delilah had ever made it that far. I stood there holding a box of my daughter's clothes. No hug. No thank you. Just silence. I left with an ache I couldn't name. Still, I kept calling. I sent messages. I mailed her birthday cards. Sometimes she'd reply, a short thanks or a thumbs up emoji. But most days, it was just me and the quiet. Then, a year later, I heard she dropped out of college. No explanation. No conversation. Just vanished. I found out through someone at church who saw her in town working at a boutique. When I visited the store to see her, she acted like I was embarrassing her. Kept calling me Loretta in front of her coworkers. Said she was busy with inventory. That night, I sat in my car and wept. Because it wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. I didn't recognize this version of her, and she didn't want to recognize me. Months went by. Then came the engagement. A Facebook post with a ring as big as a marble and the caption, "He makes me feel brand new." Brand new. Like I was the old. People began congratulating me at the grocery store, at the laundromat, even at church. Everyone said, "You must be so proud." I nodded, smiled, lied. But inside, I felt like a shadow at my own parade. Delilah didn't call me about the engagement. Didn't even text. I saw the wedding plans unfold like I was watching a stranger's life. A bridal shower I wasn't invited to. A bachelorette trip to Charleston. A registry full of $300 appliances. The day the invitation arrived, I held it in my hands like a warning. No handwritten note. No mom, I'd love for you to be there. Just a printed card and a location. And on the RSVP line, I wrote, "Yes, I will attend." Because part of me still believed she might look into the crowd and see me. The one who stayed. The one who loved her first. The one who made her from scratch. But the wedding came. And so did the pain. The bridesmaids were all tall and polished, with glassy smiles and tight curls. The Grady family sat up front. I was placed in the last row near the door. Not even a boutonniere. Not even my name on the program. I wore a blue dress with lace sleeves. I had sewn it myself. No one noticed. But I noticed everything. Like the way Weston's mother held Delilah's hand before the walk down the aisle. The way she kissed her forehead. The way Delilah cried. And the way she looked right past me, like I was a ghost in a crowded room. Then, when the pastor asked, "Who is this beautiful young woman's family?" and someone gestured to the Grady side, I held my breath. Delilah turned. And with a grin that shattered every piece of me, she said, "They're all here. Just my people." Not a glance in my direction. Not a name spoken. Just silence. I thought I had known heartbreak. But I hadn't. Not until that moment. Still, I didn't leave. Because what happened at the reception? That changed everything. And it was the moment I finally saw the truth behind the smile. The reception was held in a converted barn outside Austin. Walls draped in white chiffon, candles glowing from mason jars, and flowers hanging like vines from every wooden beam. It was beautiful. Expensive. The kind of wedding little girls dream of when they grow up watching fairy tales. But this wasn't a fairy tale. Not for me. I found my seat. Table 12. Back by the bar. I recognized no one. They placed me beside a couple from out of town who thought I was part of the waitstaff. The woman asked if I could get her a refill of sparkling water. I said nothing. Just sat there, staring at the crystal chandelier swinging above the dance floor like it belonged in a palace. I looked around. All those years I thought we were building something sacred. Something unbreakable. But in this moment, it was clear. I was the cracked foundation she'd built her new life on top of. Then came the toasts. First was Weston's best man, telling some long-winded story about spring break and beer pong. The crowd roared with laughter. Then Weston's mother stood up, her voice trembling with joy. "I've always prayed for a daughter," she said, lifting her glass. "And now I finally have one. I promise to love and protect you, Delilah, like you were my own." Delilah cried, came over, hugged her. And again, no one looked at me. No one noticed that I was sitting with my hands folded tightly in my lap, digging my nails into my skin just to stay upright. That's when I decided to get up. I needed air. Or maybe just escape. I walked past rows of clinking glasses and danced around photographers trying to capture perfect moments. I found my way to the back patio where the stars hung low, and the music was muffled by distance. I leaned against the railing and closed my eyes. But then, I heard it. Two voices, just on the other side of the bushes. Delilah's. And Weston's. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But sometimes God doesn't let you leave until you've heard the truth. Weston's voice was tight. Irritated. "She's embarrassing. I told you, we should have just sent her a thank you card and left it at that." Delilah sighed. "I know, but I thought she'd just blend in. She wasn't supposed to sit up front. I don't even know how she got there. She wore lace. Delilah. She looked like she was auditioning for a role in The Help." Delilah laughed. And then she said it. "I mean, come on. No one here knows she's my mom. As far as they're concerned, she's the maid." The air left my body. Right there, under the same stars I used to sing her to sleep beneath, my daughter erased me. With her new husband. With laughter. As if I had never mattered. As if I was just some poor, dusty woman who showed up uninvited. I stepped back into the shadows and waited for them to walk away. My legs trembled, but I didn't fall. I wouldn't fall. I'd done enough of that already. I walked slowly back inside, sat at my table, and stared at my untouched slice of cake. It was lemon. Her favorite. The song changed to something upbeat. The dance floor filled. They were laughing, spinning, tossing napkins into the air like celebration couldn't be stained. But I was already unraveling inside. And yet, I didn't leave. Because something told me, no, someone told me, God, maybe, that this wasn't the end of the story. And sure enough, something happened that no one expected. Not Delilah. Not Weston. Not anyone in that room. It started with a sudden thud. Then a scream. And within seconds, the celebration turned into chaos. And in the middle of it all, I saw something in my daughter's eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Real, human fear. Because something had come to crash her fairy tale. And what came next would crack open a truth she couldn't hide anymore. The music cut off mid-beat. There was a crash near the cake table, followed by a gasp that swept across the room like a wave. Glass shattered. People stood up, heels scraping against hardwood, heads twisting toward the commotion. I stood too, my hand trembling against the back of my chair. Weston's father had collapsed, face down, right between the groom's table and the dance floor. For a long second, nobody moved, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Then screams erupted. The DJ dropped his headphones. Someone called out, "Is there a doctor here?" Guests rushed forward, but I stayed frozen, my eyes not on the man who had fallen, but on Delilah. Her perfect white smile had vanished. Her hands covered her mouth, her eyes wide and wild. She looked at Weston, then back at the floor, her whole body shaking. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but time stretched in that barn like a pulled thread. Guests were ushered out onto the patio. The music never came back on. The air smelled of champagne and smoke from the candles that had been knocked over in the chaos. An hour later, someone whispered that Weston's father had suffered a stroke. Delilah vanished. I found her alone in the bridal suite, sitting on a velvet stool in front of a vanity. Her veil was off, her hair undone. She didn't look like a bride. She looked like a scared little girl. She didn't notice me at first. I hovered by the door, unsure whether to walk in or walk away. My heart ached, torn between every insult she had flung at me and the motherly instinct still living deep in my bones. Then she saw me, and for a brief moment, just a flicker, her face softened. Mama. The word felt foreign in her mouth, but it was real. I walked in, slowly, sat down across from her. No one else had come. Not Weston. Not his mother. Not the bridesmaids who had toasted to forever. Just me. The maid. She sniffed hard, wiped her cheeks, and stared at the floor. I didn't think it would go like this, she whispered. I nodded. Life rarely does. She looked at me then. Really looked at me. Like maybe, beneath the hurt and resentment, she remembered the woman who used to kiss her scraped knees and sing her to sleep. I didn't mean to say that. Earlier. About you being the maid. Her voice cracked. It just slipped out. I didn't respond. My hands were folded in my lap. My knuckles pale. You were always there, she said softly. Even when he wasn't. Even when I pushed you away. There it was. A sliver of truth. And maybe guilt. She looked down again, picking at her wedding dress. Her nails had chipped. I thought marrying into that family would make me feel like I belonged somewhere better, she admitted. Like I could leave the trailer behind. Start fresh. Be someone else. Tears fell onto her lap. But now I feel like a stranger in my own life. I leaned forward, speaking low. You don't become better by pretending your past doesn't exist, Delilah. You become better by honoring who got you here. She cried harder now, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, Mama. I didn't move to hug her. I just sat there, let her sit in the weight of it. Sometimes, silence speaks louder than comfort. After a few minutes, Weston came in. His face was pale, his shirt stained with sweat. "They're taking him to ICU," he said. "He's stable, but they don't know yet." He looked at Delilah, and for the first time, I saw something colder in his expression. "I need to be with my mom," he said, not unkindly, just distant, removed. Delilah stood up, nodded, wiped her face quickly and followed him out of the room without looking back at me. Again. I sat there alone, staring into the vanity mirror. And for the first time that day, I didn't see a broken woman. I saw strength. A quiet, painful kind of strength. I had survived her absence. I had survived her words. And I would survive this. But something inside me had shifted. Delilah's apology, her tears, they mattered. But they didn't fix the years of silence. They didn't erase the nights I waited up, or the invitations I never received. I knew then I couldn't go back to the way things were. And more importantly, I wouldn't. I got up from the chair, straightened my back, and walked out of the bridal suite with my head held high. The reception was over. The guests were gone. The decorations already half dismantled. But before I left, I passed Weston's mother near the front entrance. She gave me a quick glance. More pity than respect. "Rough night," she muttered. I stopped, looked her straight in the eyes. I raised her alone. Without help. Without privilege. Without running water, some years. And I did it with love. She blinked, caught off guard. "And for the record," I said, my voice clear and steady, "I was never the maid. I was the foundation." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't need a thank you. I didn't need applause. But I was done begging to be seen. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a mother can do is leave the room. After the wedding, weeks passed without a single call from Delilah. Not even to say thank you for coming. Not even to ask if I made it home safe. I went back to my routines. My little one-bedroom apartment near the edge of town, my crossword puzzles, my evening walks to keep my joints moving. I folded towels, watched the Weather Channel, and tried to pretend my heart wasn't sitting in pieces in the corner. But pretending only lasts so long. One Sunday, after church, I ran into Sister Jean from the old neighborhood. Her granddaughter had posted wedding photos on Facebook. She pulled out her phone and showed them to me like she was sharing a family album. "Isn't Delilah just glowing?" she said, flipping through images I hadn't seen. In every photo, Delilah looked radiant. But in not one was I there. I was cropped out. In the one photo I remembered being in, the one at the end of the aisle, they had edited the angle. I was out of frame. Vanished like I'd never existed. And I understood then. She wasn't just trying to distance herself. She was erasing me. There's something bone-deep painful about watching someone you love rewrite history while you're still alive to remember it. A few days later, I received a letter from Delilah. It wasn't handwritten. Just a printed sheet. Cold. Sterile. She said Weston's father was recovering well, but that things were a little chaotic right now, and that they needed time and space to settle into married life. Time and space. That's what a mother gets after 20-something years of sacrifice. "No, thank you for being there." "No, I miss you. Just time and space." I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That I missed the sound of her feet running through the trailer barefoot? That I still kept her baby blanket in a box in my closet? That some nights, I still reached for the phone, wanting to tell her about the blue jay that nested outside my kitchen window? No. I said nothing. And yet, life has a strange way of dragging us back to what we haven't finished. A month later, I received a call. From Weston's mother. It took me a few seconds to place her voice. Polished, brittle, like a mirror with cracks you couldn't quite see. "Delilah asked me to call," she said. "She's not feeling well. Something about stomach issues." Would you mind coming by the house to check on her? I hesitated. Why didn't Delilah call me herself? And why now? But something inside me, some old maternal reflex, flared to life. So I agreed. I took the bus. 3 transfers. A blister on my heel. 90 minutes in the Texas heat. Their home was massive. Gated. Manicured. Sterile. The kind of place that smelled like air freshener and silence. Weston's mother met me at the door. She didn't invite me in. Just pointed toward the back. She's in the guest room. Guest room. I found Delilah curled up in bed, her face pale, eyes red. She looked small. Not just physically, but emotionally. Like someone who had gotten everything they asked for and still felt empty. She looked up when I walked in. No smile. No fake tone. Just a whisper. Mama. I sat beside her bed. She didn't speak right away. Just stared at her hands. Then she told me the truth. She'd had a miscarriage. 2 days earlier. No one had come with her to the hospital. Not Weston. Not his mother. No one. She said she hadn't even told Weston she was pregnant yet. She was waiting for the right moment. And then one morning, she woke up in pain and blood. She took an Uber to the ER. Alone. They kept her overnight, but no one checked in. Not even the people living in the same house. She came home and crawled into bed, and that's when it hit her, what it really meant to have pushed me away. I thought having this life would make me feel safe, she said. But I've never felt more alone. Her voice cracked. Her whole body shook. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't bring up the wedding, or the maid comment, or the years of silence. I just pulled the blanket up over her shoulders and sat with her until she fell asleep. Because no matter how far a child runs, when they come back hurting, a mother still shows up. But as I sat there, I looked around her room. There were no photos of us. No sign of her childhood. No family, no memory of where she came from. It was like someone had erased her past. She had become a stranger even to herself. That night, as I rode the bus home in the dark, I made a decision. I had spent my life pouring into a child who had mistaken my love for a stepping stone. I wasn't bitter, but I was tired. Tired of showing up for someone who only called when the world failed her. It was time I started showing up for myself. And what I chose to do next would shake Delilah's perfect little world. Because I wasn't just the woman who raised her anymore. I was the woman she would have to reckon with. The days after I visited Delilah passed quiet. She didn't call, didn't text, not even a message to say thank you. And I didn't expect one. Because I finally understood something I should have learned a long time ago. You can love someone with every fiber of your being and still not be enough for the person they're trying to become. But I also knew something she didn't. Something I had quietly prepared for years ago. Back when she first started pulling away. I had a will. A full estate plan, drawn up by a quiet, kind lawyer named Mr. Densmore, who used to sit beside me at church potlucks. It wasn't much, just my savings, a small piece of land left by my late uncle, and my name on a community garden fund I'd helped build from scratch. But it was something. And for most of my adult life, I'd kept Delilah as the sole beneficiary. Every document, every account, every contingency plan had her name typed in black and white. Because I believed she would carry forward what I started. But after the wedding, after she turned her back on me in front of 100 people and smiled as she erased me, that belief died. And so, on a Thursday morning, I walked back into Mr. Densmore's office, sat across from him, and said, I need to make a change. He blinked, lifted his pen, waited. I want her name off everything. He didn't ask why. He just nodded. And we started rewriting the future. Instead of Delilah, I named a young woman from my neighborhood. A girl named Doreen who'd lost her mama to cancer and spent her weekends helping elders with groceries. I named the church's education fund. The library that let me read for free when I couldn't afford to heat the trailer. And I left a small portion to Sister Jean's granddaughter, who was working her way through nursing school. It felt right. It felt clean. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about it. Because Delilah had made her choices. And now I was making mine. But fate has a way of stirring the pot just when you think things are settling. A week later, I received another call. From Weston. Not his mother. Not Delilah. Weston. His voice was tight, almost mechanical. I think you need to come see her. I asked what happened. She's not doing well. She's been in bed for days. She won't eat, won't talk. Her mom's trying to help, but she keeps asking for you. I should have felt vindicated. I should have leaned into the power of being wanted only after everything else had failed. But I didn't. Because despite everything, she was still my child. And so, I went. The house looked the same, pristine and cold. But inside, it smelled of lavender oil and dampness. The curtains were drawn. The hallway felt darker than I remembered. I found her curled up in bed again, her frame smaller somehow, like she had shrunk under the weight of her own life. She opened her eyes when she heard my footsteps, and whispered just 2 words. You came. I nodded. She sat up slowly, propping herself on pillows. I'm sorry, Mama, she said, her voice dry and cracked. Not just for the wedding. For all of it. For leaving you. For forgetting what you gave me. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought if I looked forward enough, I could outrun the past. But the past is where I was loved. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is safer than words. I want to fix things, she continued. I want to come see you. Help you around the house. Just be your daughter again. I wanted to believe her. But something inside me, something old and worn, kept me guarded. Then she said the thing I wasn't expecting. I found the will. My heart stopped. What? She looked down at her hands. Weston's mother went through your things when you visited. Said she wanted to get ahead of logistics. She found the old version, with my name on it. My mouth tightened. She made a copy. I saw it. Then her voice shifted. Softer. Calculated. You changed it, didn't you? I didn't answer. Why? She asked, though I could hear the answer in her voice. Because love isn't paperwork, I finally said. It's action. And you stopped showing up. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. She just lowered her head. And for once, the silence wasn't mine. It was hers. I stood up to leave. She reached for my hand. Mama, I don't want your money. I just want you. I looked into her eyes. And maybe, just maybe, I believed her. But belief and trust, they're not the same. So I pulled my hand gently from hers and said, you'll have to prove it. Then I walked out, past Weston's mother who watched me with pinched lips and a wrinkled brow. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because I saw it in her eyes. I was no longer invisible. And Delilah? She had just learned that not all love is unconditional. Some love requires remembering. Some love requires work. And for the first time, the work was hers. The next time I heard from Delilah, it was a knock on my door. Not a text. Not a phone call. A knock. I opened it slowly, unsure of what version of her would be on the other side. She stood there in jeans and an old hoodie. No makeup. Hair pulled back. A grocery bag in one hand. Her eyes searching mine like she was waiting for permission just to exist there. I brought dinner, she said quietly. I stepped aside without a word. She placed the bag on my counter and started unpacking. cans of tomato soup, a small loaf of bread, a block of cheese. Thought maybe we could make grilled cheese like we used to, she added, not looking up. I said nothing. Just watched her move around my tiny kitchen like it was unfamiliar and familiar all at once. She wasn't the polished woman from the wedding anymore. She looked tired, humbled, real. That night, we ate quietly by the window. She sat in the same spot she used to as a child, even though the view now was nothing more than a parking lot and a flickering streetlight. After we finished eating, she offered to do the dishes. That was the first test. I didn't stop her. She scrubbed the old pans with her rings off, sleeves rolled up, like she was washing more than just food, like she was trying to clean history. For weeks, she kept showing up. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes with silence, once with a small bouquet of daisies and no explanation. She asked about the community garden, about Sister Jean, about whether my knees still hurt in the mornings. It wasn't much, but it was something. One morning, I opened my door to find a box on the step. Inside was a photo album. On the first page was a picture of us from her 3rd birthday. Her wearing a paper crown, me holding a melting cake. Each page after that was filled with printed photos I didn't know she had. Pictures from high school, from our old trailer, even some I hadn't remembered existed. Tucked into the back was a note. I'm sorry I tried to erase you. I was ashamed of how hard you worked, and I confused that with shame about where we came from. But I see it now. You weren't the maid. You were the miracle. I didn't cry when I read it. But I did sit down for a long time, the weight of it pressing into me like sunlight through heavy clouds. The second test came when she asked if she could join me at church. She hadn't stepped inside those doors since she was 16. We sat together in the 4th pew, and I watched her mouth move through the hymns she once sang as a child. Her voice cracked. Her eyes welled up. Afterward, she helped set up for fellowship, wiped tables, poured lemonade, hugged Sister Jean like she belonged there. She was trying. But healing isn't just trying. It's waiting, too. One day, I invited her to visit the garden. We walked slowly down the rows of vegetables and herbs I had helped plant with my own hands. She crouched beside the sweet peas and smiled. I forgot how much I loved this place, she said. I used to think it was so boring. I chuckled. That's because you were a child. Children run. Grown women kneel and tend. Then I said something that had been waiting on my tongue. You can't fix the past by showing up once or twice, Delilah. You have to keep showing up. Even when it's not convenient. Even when no one claps for you. She nodded, quiet and listening. I know, she said. That's why I'm here. I want to earn back what I threw away. And that was the 3rd test. Not the words, but the fact that she didn't ask me to hurry up and forgive her. She didn't ask to be rewarded. She just stood there in the dirt, asking for nothing but time. That day, I told her I had removed her name from my will. Her face didn't twist. She didn't flinch. She just said, I deserve that. And then, after a pause, I don't care about your money. I care about your peace. I watched her for a long moment. Then I smiled. Because finally, she had stopped trying to buy her way back into my life. And started planting herself in it again. That week, I called Mr. Densmore. Told him I wasn't changing the documents just yet. Let's give it time, I said. But she's showing promise. He laughed. Sounds like a teacher with a tough student. I smiled back. Sounds like a mother with a second chance. Autumn came slow to Texas that year. The air cooled just enough to turn the edges of the trees golden, and the sky settled into a softer kind of blue. I'd begun walking again each morning, same path, same pace. But now, every Saturday, there were 2 cups on my porch instead of 1. Delilah. She started meeting me for coffee. No grand entrances. No makeup. Just jeans, sneakers, and quiet. We talked. About little things at first. Weather, news, casseroles. But over time, the conversations deepened. She told me about Weston, how their marriage, shiny on the outside, had started to show cracks. He didn't understand grief. He didn't hold space. He offered solutions instead of shoulders. She said something one morning I never expected. I married him because he reminded me of everything I thought I wanted. But when things got hard, he vanished. Just like my real father. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw not a wife or a girl in a white dress, but a woman, weathered by her own choices, finally brave enough to name them. One day, she brought me to a small building just outside of town, a youth literacy center. Inside were rows of books, shelves of puzzles, and tables built for small hands. And on the wall, a plaque. Callahan Learning Room. My heart skipped. I donated the last of my wedding fund, she said. The leftover gifts. The registry returns. I wanted to put your name somewhere kids could grow under it. Where they'd know that even if life starts hard, it doesn't have to stay that way. I couldn't speak for a moment. I just ran my fingers along the brass letters. You did this for me? I asked. She shook her head. No. I did this because of you. The next week, she came by and helped me clean out my closet. We laughed over old clothes, cried over baby shoes I couldn't throw away. We found a box of her old school essays. One had a gold star and the words, "I want to be like my mama when I grow up." She read it out loud. Then she hugged me. Not the stiff, sideways kind. The kind that lingers. And that's when I knew. She was back. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. The last test came quietly. I was in the hospital for a minor surgery. A gallbladder, nothing life-threatening. Delilah stayed the whole night. She slept in the chair beside me, held my hand through the beeping of monitors, fed me ice chips when I couldn't sit up. When I woke up groaning from pain, she said, "I've got you, Mama." And I believed her. Because she didn't run this time. She stayed. After I was discharged, she moved into my spare room for a week, just to make sure I recovered properly. She cooked soup, organized my medicine, even yelled at the pharmacist for shorting me 2 pills. I smiled from the hallway. She was me now. One afternoon, she came in with a piece of paper, a new will, her own. She sat beside me and said, "I put your name at the top, because everything I have now, this clarity, this peace, it came from you." I didn't cry. I just held her hand. Later that night, as she folded laundry beside me, she asked something unexpected. "Do you ever think about putting my name back on your papers?" I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "I already have." Her breath caught. "You have." I nodded. "But not because I pity you. Not because you apologized. But because you earned your place again. Not as my child. As my equal." She stood still, holding a shirt to her chest. And then whispered, "Thank you." But this time, it wasn't the kind of thank you say just to be polite. It was the kind of thank you whisper when you finally come home. It was Christmas morning when she asked if I would come. Not to her house. To their house. The big one with the white fence. The one I once walked out of with silence burning behind me. The house where I was cropped out of pictures and cropped out of memory. I hesitated. Delilah noticed. "I want you to come," she said. "Not because I feel guilty. Because I want you to be seen." I said I'd think about it. She didn't pressure me. She just said, "The table will be set either way." I prayed on it. Told myself I didn't need to go back. That I'd found peace already. But deep down, I knew. Some victories don't happen in silence. Some healing requires stepping back into the place where the wound was made, just to prove it doesn't own you anymore. So I dressed in a deep forest green blouse and black slacks, hair pinned back, lipstick soft but proud. I took the bus. When I arrived, Weston opened the door. His face was unreadable. But his tone was different this time. "Glad you're here," he said. "Not welcome. Not hello. But glad." I stepped inside. The house was warm with cinnamon and orange zest. Holiday music played faintly. There were candles and garland, and laughter floating from the living room. And at the center of it all, the table. It was round, not long like before. No ends, no head, no hierarchy. And right there beside Delilah, a seat with my name card. Mama Loretta. I stood still. It wasn't the name that got me. It was the mama. After all these years, she remembered who I'd been before the silence. She pulled out the chair for me herself. We ate. We talked. Weston asked about my garden. His mother even smiled at me once. Not warmly, but politely. And sometimes, that's enough. As we passed dishes and shared stories, I noticed something on the sideboard near the photos. A frame. Inside it, a picture of me and Delilah, taken just weeks before the wedding. One I'd never seen printed. She'd kept it. She had it displayed. And beneath it, in careful handwriting, where I came from, where I found strength. After dessert, Delilah pulled me aside. She handed me a small box. No wrapping, just a velvet ribbon. Inside was a locket. On one side, a picture of her as a baby. On the other, a photo of me, standing in front of our old trailer, holding her in my arms. "I'm sorry it took so long to understand," she said. "But I do now." I took the locket and fastened it around my neck. It didn't fix everything, but it held something sacred. Proof that love can bend, stretch, break, and still find its way home. Later that evening, she walked me to the bus stop. It was cold, the kind that nips at your fingers but not your spirit. She wrapped her coat tighter around herself, then looked at me and said, "I'll come by next Sunday." I smiled. "Bring your appetite." She nodded, then hugged me. Tight. Full. The kind of hug you give when there are no words left. As the bus pulled away, I looked out the window at the shrinking figure of my daughter, standing under the street lamp, hand raised high. And I realized, sometimes, the people we raise forget who we are. But if we keep our strength soft, and our dignity sharp, they remember. Not because we shouted, but because we stood still long enough for them to come back. That Christmas, I got no diamonds, no cruises, no keys to a house I didn't ask for. But I got something better. A name at the table, a photo in the frame, and a daughter, not remade, but rebuilt. And me. I got to be the woman who didn't just survive being called the maid. I became the one they couldn't forget. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please take a second to like the video, share it with someone who needs healing, and comment below where you're watching from. Make sure to subscribe for more stories like this one.